I don't really know how to begin, but maybe honesty is the only way. My name doesn't matter, not for this story. What matters is how I ended up where I am now, sitting alone in my small apartment, staring at the walls as if they could tell me where I went wrong, replaying every moment of my marriage, every word I said, every glance I ignored. I met Daniel when I was 24. He was charming in a way that wasn't loud or obvious. He wasn't the type who drew everyone's attention the second he walked into a room. Instead, he had this quiet confidence, the kind that made you lean closer just to hear what he had to say. I was young, restless, and desperate to believe that love could anchor me to something stable. He became that anchor, or at least, I thought he did. When we first got married, I truly believed we had the kind of love people envied. We weren't rich, we didn't have glamorous jobs or a picture-perfect house, but there was warmth. There were nights where we stayed up until 3 a.m., laughing at stupid things, drinking cheap wine, and holding each other like the world outside didn't exist. But life doesn't stay suspended in those golden moments. Bills came. Responsibilities piled up. I started working longer hours at the office, climbing up the ladder but also burying myself in exhaustion. Daniel worked as a freelance photographer, which meant his schedule was flexible, sometimes too flexible. He had days where he didn't have to leave the house at all, while I returned home late, drained and worn. At first, I thought nothing of it. I told myself we were just entering that stage of marriage where comfort replaces intensity. That it was normal to lose a little of the spark. But then the distance between us stopped feeling like something temporary and began to feel like a wall I couldn't climb over. It started with small things. He became distracted during conversations, his phone buzzing late at night, his smile guarded in a way I couldn't quite explain. I brushed it off, convincing myself I was paranoid. After all, he still kissed me goodbye in the mornings. He still brought me coffee when I was too tired to make it myself. How could I suspect anything more? And yet, suspicion grows like a weed, you don't notice it until it's too big to pull out without tearing something else apart. One evening, I came home earlier than usual. The air in our apartment felt strange, almost as if it had been rearranged in my absence. Daniel was in the shower, and his phone was on the kitchen counter. Normally, I wouldn't touch it. I believed in trust, in giving each other privacy. But that night, my hand moved before my mind could stop it. The screen lit up with a message. Just one sentence, but it was enough to change everything. I can still taste you. When can we see each other again? My heart dropped. I remember standing there, staring at those words, unable to breathe, my fingers cold and trembling. A part of me wanted to throw the phone across the room, to scream, to storm into the bathroom and demand the truth. But I didn't. I put the phone back exactly as it was and sat on the couch, waiting. When Daniel came out, smiling like nothing was wrong, water still dripping from his hair, I looked at him and realized I didn't know the man standing in front of me anymore. I didn't confront him that night. I don't know why. Maybe I was afraid of the answer. Maybe I wanted one more evening of pretending everything was fine. He sat next to me, kissed my temple, and asked about my day. I answered mechanically, words falling out of my mouth while my mind replayed that message over and over again. That was the moment I realized our marriage was no longer what I thought it was. And yet, I couldn't let go. Not then. Not yet. Because love doesn't die instantly, it rots slowly, like fruit left too long in the sun, until one day you can't deny the stench anymore. The days after I read that message felt like living inside a nightmare that no one else could see. Outwardly, everything looked the same. Daniel and I went through our routines, shared meals, talked about mundane things like bills and errands. But inside, I was unraveling. I studied him like a stranger I had to figure out. The way his phone never left his side. How he'd smile at something on the screen and quickly tuck it away when I walked into the room. The subtle shift in how he touched me, less eager, less present, almost as if his mind was elsewhere, or worse, with someone else. Every little detail screamed at me, but I kept my silence. I wasn't ready to shatter our life, not without proof, not without knowing how deep his betrayal went. I told myself I needed time to prepare, to build the strength to confront him. In truth, I think I was clinging to denial, holding on to the hope that I was mistaken, that the message was a one-time thing, a misunderstanding. But denial only holds for so long. One Saturday, I told him I had extra work to do and left the apartment. Instead of going to the office, I sat in my car at the end of the street, watching our building, my heart pounding in my chest. I felt ridiculous, like some desperate cliché, spying on my own husband. And yet, I couldn't stop. I needed to know. An hour later, I saw her. A woman I had never seen before, walking confidently toward our building. She was beautiful in a way that was almost painful to look at, tall, elegant, with long dark hair that caught the sunlight. She buzzed at our door, and seconds later, Daniel appeared, smiling like a man in love. He kissed her before they even stepped inside. That was the moment the world split in two. I sat frozen in the car, tears blurring my vision, bile rising in my throat. There was no misunderstanding, no excuse. He wasn't just texting someone, he was with her, in our home, in our bed, most likely. I should have driven away, but I couldn't. I stayed until she finally left, adjusting her coat, her cheeks flushed, her lips still swollen. She didn't look guilty. She looked satisfied. I didn't confront him that night either. Instead, I lay next to him in bed, silent, while he fell asleep easily, as if he hadn't just destroyed everything we built. I stared at the ceiling for hours, wondering when exactly he stopped loving me, wondering if he ever did. Over the next few weeks, I carried the secret knowledge like a burning coal inside me. Every time he touched me, I wanted to recoil. Every time he lied about where he was going, I wanted to scream. But I also noticed something about myself, something I didn't want to admit. Part of me still wanted him. Still wanted to believe we could fix this. I hated him for betraying me, but I loved him too much to let go. And that was the cruelest truth of all. It was around that time that I met someone else. His name was Eric. He worked at my office, though we'd barely spoken beyond polite greetings. He wasn't conventionally handsome like Daniel, but there was warmth in his eyes, a steadiness I found myself drawn to. One evening, after another exhausting day of pretending everything at home was fine, Eric offered to walk me to my car. We talked, just small things at first, work, music, the kind of conversations that mean nothing and everything at once. I laughed that night. Really laughed, in a way I hadn't in months. And that scared me. Because as much as I wanted to hate Daniel and the woman he chose over me, I realized I was standing on the edge of something equally dangerous. I was about to become what I despised. Eric didn't mean to become anything more than a coworker. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. But once you've tasted the warmth of someone who actually listens, who actually sees you, it's impossible to go back to pretending you're satisfied with cold silence at home. It started innocently enough. Coffee breaks stretched into longer conversations, emails about work ended with personal questions, subtle jokes turned into the kind of laughter that lingers in your chest long after. Eric had this way of leaning in when I spoke, as if every word mattered. Daniel used to do that, once upon a time. Now, Daniel's attention was elsewhere, on another woman, another life. One evening, I stayed late at the office. I wasn't even working anymore, I just didn't want to go home. Eric noticed me still at my desk when most of the lights had gone out. "You okay?" he asked, stopping by with his jacket slung over his arm. I hesitated. I could have lied, said I was fine. But the exhaustion, the loneliness, the betrayal bubbling under my skin, it all pressed against me like a dam about to burst. I shook my head. "Not really," I whispered. He didn't push. He just sat down across from me and waited. Something about that silence, gentle, patient, broke me more than any harsh word could. My throat tightened, and before I knew it, tears spilled down my cheeks. Eric stood, moved around the desk, and crouched beside me. He didn't ask questions. He didn't try to fix it. He just rested his hand lightly on mine, grounding me, letting me cry without shame. That was the moment the line blurred. After that night, things shifted. We started having lunch together, then dinners. Sometimes we lingered in his car, talking long after the parking lot emptied. His hand would brush mine, and neither of us pulled away. There was an unspoken understanding that we were walking into dangerous territory, yet neither of us turned back. The first time he kissed me, it was raining. We'd left the office late again, and I was laughing about something stupid, my hair plastered to my face. He touched my cheek, so gently, and I froze. For one heartbeat, I could have stopped it. I could have stepped back and saved myself from crossing the line. But I didn't. I let him kiss me, and it was like my body remembered what it meant to feel wanted. Heat surged through me, the kind I hadn't felt in years, not even with Daniel. And then the guilt hit me like a tidal wave. I pulled away, trembling. I can't. I'm married. I know, Eric said softly. He didn't look ashamed, just sad. But does he treat you the way you deserve? The truth was no. He didn't. Daniel treated me like an afterthought, a convenience, while giving the best of himself to someone else. But still, he was my husband. I had vowed to love him, to stay faithful. That night, I drove home in silence, my lips still tingling from Eric's kiss, my mind spinning with self-loathing. I was no better than Daniel now. The betrayal ran both ways. When I walked into our apartment, Daniel was sitting on the couch, scrolling on his phone. He barely glanced up when I entered. "Hey," he muttered. "Hey," I replied, my voice hoarse. And just like that, the walls of our marriage cracked a little more. He had his secret. Now I had mine. The next weeks were a blur of contradictions. I tried to pull away from Eric, but the more I resisted, the more I found myself drawn to him. The guilt burned, but so did the passion. Every stolen moment felt like oxygen after drowning. Meanwhile, Daniel grew more careless. He'd stay out late without explanation, his excuses flimsy, his affection non-existent. Sometimes I wondered if he even cared enough to hide it anymore. The cruel irony wasn't lost on me, we were both liars, both betrayers, circling each other in a marriage built on crumbling foundations. The difference was, Daniel had pushed me away. Eric pulled me closer. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. Living two lives is exhausting. I don't know how Daniel managed it for so long, because after only a few weeks of seeing Eric in secret, I felt like I was tearing myself apart. By day, I played the dutiful wife, smiling when neighbors greeted us, cooking dinner when Daniel bothered to come home, pretending everything was fine. By night, I was someone else. A woman who let Eric touch the parts of her heart that had been starving for years. A woman who felt alive again, even if it was wrong. But the walls always close in eventually. Lies don't stay hidden forever. It started with Daniel's sudden shift in behavior. One evening, he came home earlier than usual, dropping his keys on the counter with more force than necessary. I was in the kitchen, pretending to chop vegetables, when I felt his eyes on me. "You've been different lately," he said. I froze, the knife hovering over the cutting board. "Different how?" He shrugged, leaning against the doorframe. "I don't know. Distracted. Distant. Like you're somewhere else." The irony was almost laughable. Me? Distant? This was coming from the man who disappeared for hours, whose phone lit up with messages he guarded like state secrets. But I bit my tongue. I couldn't expose him without exposing myself. Instead, I forced a smile. "Work's just been stressful. You know how it is." He studied me for a long moment, his jaw tightening. Something flickered in his eyes, suspicion, maybe even jealousy, but he didn't push further. Still, that night, he reached for me in bed, more insistently than he had in months. His hands were rough, hurried, as if trying to claim something he feared was slipping away. I let him, my body stiff, my mind miles away. The next day, Eric noticed the shadows under my eyes. "You okay?" he asked gently as we sat in his car during lunch, the windows fogged from our stolen closeness. "I don't know," I admitted. "He's starting to notice." Eric sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I don't want to be the reason your marriage falls apart." I almost laughed at that. My marriage was already in ruins. Daniel had destroyed it long before Eric ever touched me. But saying that out loud felt like giving myself permission I wasn't ready for. Instead, I whispered, "You're not the reason." "Not really." Eric reached for my hand, and for a fleeting moment, I let myself believe I could build something new with him, something honest, something real. But guilt is a poison, and it doesn't let you rest. One evening, Daniel and I were at dinner with friends. The conversation was light, filled with laughter, but I could feel his gaze on me the whole time, sharp and probing. When we got home, he finally said it. "Are you seeing someone?" The question hit me like a slap. I stared at him, my mouth dry, my heart pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. "What?" "No," I lied quickly, too quickly. He didn't answer right away. He just studied me, his expression unreadable. Then he smirked, a bitter twist of his lips. "Funny. That's exactly what you asked me a few months ago." My blood turned cold. He knew. Maybe not for certain, but enough to sense it. Enough to play this twisted game of accusations and silence. That night, we didn't touch. We lay side by side in the dark, two strangers bound by vows neither of us respected anymore. The air was thick with words unspoken, accusations left hanging. And in that silence, I realized something terrifying: we weren't just hurting each other anymore. We were destroying ourselves. Eric wanted me to leave Daniel. He hadn't said it outright yet, but I saw it in his eyes, in the way he held me as if he couldn't stand the thought of letting me go. Daniel, on the other hand, seemed torn between clinging tighter and letting me drift completely. And me? I was caught in the middle, drowning in betrayal of my own making, unable to choose which way to swim. But deep down, I knew a choice was coming. And whichever one I made, someone's heart was going to break. The choice didn't wait for me to make it. Life forced it out of me. It was a Tuesday evening, one of those gray, rainy nights when the world feels heavier than usual. I had just left Eric's car, still tasting his kiss, my heart pounding with both desire and dread. I told myself I'd go home, shower, cook something simple, and play the part of a wife again. But as I stepped into our apartment, Daniel was waiting. He was sitting at the dining table with his phone in his hand, his face pale, his jaw clenched so tight I thought it might snap. "Where were you?" he asked. I dropped my purse on the counter, trying to steady my voice. "At work." "I told you, don't," he cut me off sharply. "Don't lie to me." Something in his tone made my stomach twist. I glanced at the phone in his hand, dread crawling up my spine. "What did you do?" I whispered. Daniel slammed the phone onto the table. "I went through your messages." My blood ran cold. I had been careful, or at least I thought I had. Deleting texts, avoiding calls at home. But somewhere, I had slipped. Maybe a notification I forgot to clear, maybe something buried too deep for me to erase. Whatever it was, he found enough. "Eric," he spat the name like poison. "That's his name, right?" I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened, my throat locked. The room spun around me. "It's not," I started, but the words died on my tongue. Because it was. There was no denying it. Daniel stood, his chair scraping violently against the floor. "You've been screwing him behind my back." My eyes stung with tears. "And you haven't?" I shot back, my voice breaking. Don't you dare stand there and act righteous when you've been with her for months." The silence that followed was deafening. His face twisted with rage, but also something else, shock, maybe even shame. He hadn't expected me to know. For a long moment, we just stood there, two liars with our sins laid bare. Finally, he broke the silence. "So that's it then. We're both trash. Congratulations." My tears spilled over. "I didn't want this, Daniel. I wanted you. But you left me long before I ever touched him." He laughed bitterly, running a hand through his. The weeks after Daniel left were a blur. At first, I half expected him to come back. Every time I heard footsteps in the hallway or keys jingling near the door, my heart leapt, only to crash back into my chest when it wasn't him. I checked my phone constantly, waiting for a message, a call, anything. But silence was all he gave me. The bed felt enormous without him. I'd curl up on one side, staring at the cold, empty space where he used to sleep, haunted by the memory of his breathing, his warmth, the way he once reached for me in the dark. Eric tried to fill the void. He was kind, attentive, and for a while, I let myself believe maybe I could build something new with him. He cooked for me, listened when I cried, held me as if I wasn't broken. But every time he kissed me, guilt slammed into me like a wave. Because no matter what Daniel had done, no matter how much he hurt me, my heart still ached for him. Not for the man he became, but for the man he used to be, the one who stayed up with me until 3 a.m., laughing and drinking cheap wine, the one who promised me forever. Eric noticed it too. One night, as we sat on my couch, he brushed my hair back and whispered, "You're not really here with me, are you?" I couldn't answer. Tears filled my eyes, and he pulled away, his face etched with quiet resignation. "I love you," he said softly, "but I don't want to be someone's second choice." He left soon after. No anger, no drama. Just silence. Another door closing behind me. And suddenly, I was alone. Completely, utterly alone. The apartment became unbearable. Every corner held a memory, every object a ghost. The mug Daniel used for his morning coffee. The framed photo from our honeymoon, gathering dust on the shelf. Even the smell of his cologne lingered on the couch, mocking me. I tried to move on. I threw myself into work, stayed late at the office, avoided the emptiness waiting for me at home. Friends invited me out, but I couldn't bring myself to smile, to pretend I was fine. They didn't know the truth. How could they? How could I tell them that my marriage hadn't just ended, it had imploded, and I was standing in the wreckage, guilty as much as I was wounded? Some nights, I walked for hours, wandering the city streets until my feet ached, as if distance could erase the memories. But they followed me everywhere. One evening, months later, I saw Daniel by accident. He was across the street, camera slung over his shoulder, laughing with someone, a woman. Not the same one as before. Someone new. He looked lighter. As if the weight we had carried together was gone from his shoulders. I froze, my heart shattering all over again. He didn't see me, and I didn't call out. I just stood there, watching him walk away, realizing he had found a way to move on. And I hadn't. I went home that night and sat in the dark, the silence pressing down on me like a punishment. I thought about the choices I made. The nights with Eric, the lies I told, the way I clung to something already dead. I thought about Daniel's betrayal, my own, the cycle of hurt we created until there was nothing left. Love doesn't always end in flames or explosions. Sometimes it just rots, piece by piece, until all that remains is grief. This is my story. A confession, maybe. Or a warning. I loved. I betrayed. I was betrayed. And in the end, I lost everything. There's no happy ending here. Just silence, an empty apartment, and the weight of what I destroyed with my own hands.